Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
South Carolina, in what appears to be the second such drill, special forces have been deployed domestically alongside local sheriffs to train for midnight raids in Richland County. The footage you're seeing right now is the 3rd Special Forces Group out of Fort Bragg conducting a nighttime raid during an exercise. This is the Special Forces unit deployed. Sheriff Leon Lott stated that, quote, Richland County is an ideal location for training that cannot be replicated at Fort Bragg. Coordinating with the Special Forces will be the county's Special Response Team, or SWAT, to provide, quote, simulated scenarios for the military. What's more chilling than coordinated domestic raid training is that official reports state that live ordnance and gunfire will be employed. To top it off, the media has been restricted from any kind of embedded reporting to provide transparency for the drills.
Targets on the objective! Engage!
Now you can add this drill to the long list of domestic training exercises that have occurred so far this year. FEMA Camp Roundup drills in Florida, martial law training in California, Marines prepping for riot control in Virginia, and of course the mother of all drills, Jade Helm. This is another glaring example of the militarization of local police nationwide, who have received nearly $500 million in military equipment from the Department of Defense. So this begs the question, who is training who? When local sheriffs receive military equipment and then the Special Forces train alongside SWAT, the lines are blurred. The color of authority is transferred to the local police as they become a militarized force. Local law enforcement can't violate posse comitatus, but they can use the same equipment and tactics as the military, making them one and the same. Just a different jurisdiction, thus skirting the law and violating the Constitution. The Sun-Sentinel has reported, and now video has surfaced of Special Forces operations taking place under the cover of night in Broward County, Florida. The shocking video shows Black Hawk helicopters flying low and landing as Americans are marched single file through the city streets and then loaded into white vans taken to mock internment camps. Frightening video. Now 200 military personnel from all 4 branches of the military took part in this coordinated drill, the locations of which were not disclosed to the public prior to the urban warfare training exercise. Now the Sentinel is reporting that, quote, the goal is to prepare participants in realistic, unfamiliar training conditions before they deploy for combat overseas. However, concerned citizens are not buying it, and they believe there is a dual purpose for the action, and that is to train soldiers for real-life domestic martial law. Likewise, it's important to note that the Jade Helm exercises have recently labeled Texas and Utah as hostile territories in documents related to that exercise. Now let's flash back to 2009. The web was then ablaze with the revelation that the National Guard was hiring soldiers to become internment camp specialists.
Military Occupational Specialty, Internment Resettlement Specialist. The Army's Internment Resettlement Specialist plays an integral role in providing a uniform system of handling prisoners and detainees. First and always, these MPs are combat support soldiers, trained to fight. Then as Internment Resettlement Specialists, trained to control and supervise detainees, to ensure humane treatment, and to assist them in returning to a productive life. For this job, you must qualify for a secret clearance.
Now, for those of you watching right now thinking that this is just some crank conspiracy nonsense and Americans will never be rounded up and forced into camps, I'll leave you with the words of Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia. Now, he recently said in February of 2014, he issued a stark warning when he spoke to a group of students at the University of Hawaii. Now, he was responding to a question about the 1944 Supreme Court ruling that upheld internment of Americans during World War II. He said, quote, "You are kidding yourself if you think the same thing will not happen again. The ruling was wrong, but I would not be surprised to see it happen again. In time of war, it's no justification, but it is the reality." When a Supreme Court justice tells you it will happen again, perhaps we should listen. an operational readiness exercise conducted at the Naval Weapons Station in Yorktown, Virginia. Marines training for riot control. That's right. Marines training for riot control. Per the usual, the exercise was given the cover story of overseas preparation. Sergeant Andrew S. Wilbur, a non-lethal weapons instructor, said of a similar exercise, quote, "Consider they are hypothetically operating within an embassy." However, as we've been following for weeks, public concerns are running high amidst the recent Fort Lauderdale FEMA camp roundup drills and Ontario, California martial law training. Participants in this latest training exercise were the Bravo Fleet Anti-Terrorism Security Team Company. Oddly, the high production footage you're seeing right now is directly from the Department of Defense. It is a professional news package intended for the public to see. So this exercise actually has a twofold effect. First, the Marines are training for riot and crowd control on American soil, where Tea Partiers and constitutionalists are constantly demonized by politicians and the media. In the event of civil unrest, these same Marines could deploy this training upon Americans. Second, the media production aspect of this is chilling because it shows they're doing this in full public view. They want this to be seen. Why? Because they want the public to accept Marines, not police, conducting riot control during the coming martial law and societal breakdown. While training is a common part of military life, these tactics are suspect in context of our other reports.
Our top story on CBS 2 News. If you see a group of military helicopters flying high and dipping low in the skies above downtown L.A. later today, do not panic. CBS 2's Kirk Hawkins is live in downtown L.A. with a look at last night's special ops training maneuvers with video you'll see only right here on CBS 2. Kirk.
Hey, Sabila, good morning. We know that the downtown skyline here is popular for Hollywood film crews, but now we know that members of the military are using it to prepare for conflicts around the world. I'm going to step out of the way and give you a close-up look at the U.S. Bank building from where we are. In a second, we're going to give you an up-close and personal look at what it looks like from high above there, because that was just one of the many training sites that the military has been using over the past few days. In this video from Sky 2 last night, you can see dramatic military maneuvers by special operations forces over the sky of downtown LA. Our camera captured a Black Hawk helicopter and 4 other so-called OH-6s flying over the city. The Black Hawk hovered over the U.S. Bank building before it made a practice drop-off at a nearby park. At one point, our camera captured a soldier sitting with his legs dangling outside the chopper. We talked to one expert who said all this training probably was a dry run for a future mission.
But it's always best to get the closest terrain layout to what the objective is, wherever it could be, again, worldwide.
The LAPD won't reveal the exact details of the training exercises, but they say they're assisting the military as they focus on urban environments. The training is expected to continue again tonight.
Military exercises and drills are not something uncommon, whether it's in the United States or anywhere across the world. But it's not every time that such exercises become a reason for public paranoia and even protest movements. Now, a large-scale military drill called JDAM 15 is launching today in 7 states, including Texas, Louisiana, Florida, and Utah. The main mission of the exercise is to train the so-called unconventional warfare in deserted and remote areas, to train soldiers how to operate in difficult conditions. It's estimated that in Texas alone, more than 1,200 military men will take part in this exercise. There will be different sorts of trainings, including nightly helicopter extraction, hostage takeovers, and even a role play modeled after the French resistance to Nazi occupation during the World War II. The level of realism sought by the planners of this exercise is so high that it's unclear now whether the troops will actually try to blend in with civilians during this training. According to a PowerPoint presentation prepared by the military organizers, some of the JDAM 15 participants may conduct suspicious activities, I quote, and Part of their trainings and others will be wearing civilian attire and driving civilian vehicles. In several instances, the Army even asked for public facilities or abandoned, let's say, hospitals to be presented to them for this exercise. But all in all, information about this particular drill is very scarce. Not a lot is known about where and how the training will be actually conducted. And this has become the reason for unease among people living in the areas. In particular, the InfoWars website recently reported that the acronym for the HELM could be the Homeland Eradication of Local Militants. Some in Texas even go as far as believing that the actual reason for these exercises is to completely militarily take over Texas. The New York Times reported that in several parts of Texas, residents were either burying some of their firearms to hide them, or to the contrary, some farmers rumored to have been buying thousands and thousands of rounds of ammunition. But not only the Army officials who are saying that there will be no disruptions to everyday life of citizens across the areas where the exercises are held, but also some of the local officials are saying that this is not a problem at all. One of the mayors in Texas, the mayor of the town of El Dorado, even said that the Army could use his ranch in this military exercise. So strong the level of public concern has been in relation to the Jade Helm 15 military exercise that there's now even a protest movement called Counter Jade Helm. And these guys are looking to follow the military gear and to report to a special website as to how the military exercise is going.
Men in Kevlar vests and helmets, camouflage, carrying automatic rifles, moving in tactical armored vehicles. These aren't American troops on the battlefield, but police in Ferguson. One observer says he thought he saw police in an MRAP.
An MRAP is a mine-resistant ambush-protected vehicle. It's built to withstand armor-piercing bombs. This is not something that we need in American communities.
But Kara Dansky of the ACLU says more than 500 MRAPs have made their way from Afghanistan and Iraq to local police forces in America just over the past couple of years. It's part of what the ACLU, in a recent report, called the excessive militarization of American policing. Indications of that are everywhere in Ferguson. Police in these towns are getting much of this combat equipment free of charge from the Pentagon. The Defense Department says just in 2013, nearly $450 million worth of military equipment was given to law enforcement. A defense official says Ferguson police only got a couple of Humvees and a trailer. But police departments throughout Missouri, which are assisting in Ferguson, got 20 MRAPs and hundreds of M16 rifles in recent years. Critics say often when they get these weapons, policemen's attitudes change.
Bring it! All you f***ing idiots, bring it!
Increasingly, the police are trained to view the people in the communities that they're supposed to be protecting and serving as enemies.
It's not just their possession of all this equipment that's an issue. Watchdog groups say many of these police departments lack the training in how to use these weapons responsibly, and that often escalates the dangers. Dangers like police overreacting when conducting minor operations like serving search warrants.
They will drive up in an armored personnel carrier, raid a person's home, holding assault rifles, holding people at gunpoint, yelling at everyone to get on the floor. This is an extremely traumatic experience, and we've seen over and over again situations like this where people are traumatized and sometimes people are injured and killed.
But current and former police say criminals have increasingly more firepower, and law enforcement can't afford to be outgunned.
If people are shooting at the police and committing looting and other violent acts, then the police need to protect themselves.
The Defense Department supports this trend overall. While it would take you or me 4 to 6 weeks and unending hassle and documentation to secure a passport, as reported by the Washington Post, your local police force need only fill out a one-page form for an armored personnel carrier.
The problem is the monopoly game, which is controlled by the Federal Reserve, the private bank, which is actually controlled out of London, is manipulating all the dollars to put them out, put more and more people into debt. So the illusion of equity they have in real estate is coming apart. The players that are analyzing everything are expecting massive foreclosures next year and the beginning of what we call the recession it's going to be worse than 29. Like your house that you're living in. You think you own it. You don't.
Right.
You have contractual right to transfer the airspace, subject to you paying taxes to the state.
Right.
or the Global 2000 discussions that we had, the real problem that they have, as Kissinger says, is there are just too many people on the planet. And 40% of the world, 2 billion of us, exist on less than $2 a day. The summary of the Global 2000 report I put up on my website, nohoax.com, but if you look at it, it makes sense to get rid of people. So what they said, they're going to make godlike decisions on who lives and who dies. Now, obviously, some of the meetings we sat on, we were planning on using neutron bombs on the major cities, because that contains most of what they call...
You actually heard this?
I sat in on the meetings. I was in the game big time. In fact, I was making such a mess, they decided rather than kill me, which they could, they just invited me into the inner group and asked me to be the finance chairman. And at that point, I probably would have been in, Secretary of the Treasury or something, whatever they wanted to do with me. What I was doing prior to that, so, making it right, I would volunteer to become a president of a company, and I'd go in and liquidate it. And we get rid of the expendable containers. That was my job.
Expendable containers meaning human beings?
That's right.
Yeah, it's amazing. That's
well, that
really
was
inside vernacular, wasn't it? Yeah.
Oh, well, that's what we used at that time. I mean, it went from there to useless eaters today, so you're happy with it, you're a human resource. So, which, all you are is part of the commodity, even in the business sense. You look at it, you have a cost. Labor, what is labor? Yeah. Human resource. Right. When you're going to put together some kind of product. Well, the inside of the game, when we started to use neutron bombs, today they figure that biologicals are much cheaper. They're still planning on, the plan is to get a war started in the Middle East, and they're still planning on using a neutron bomb, or one of the bombs that they've got developed on Israel, and that's to begin World War III, which is all in the cards. And it's going to happen. They even put a monument up for this whole program. It's called the Georgia Guidestones. Outside of Atlanta, and they've got it all set down there. It's all in 8 languages. Basically, it's fait accompli as far as they're concerned. It's just to get the thing going in the Middle East, and it's not going fast enough. I mean, Carter put this thing in, so we have the Plan 2000 with the war starting in the year 2000 in the Middle East. Right. Reduce the population of the planet down to 500 million. Have one world currency under the Homeland Security, or FEMA, if you want to call it. They're going to declare an emergency, which are going to shut down everything. My friends, my CIA associates, I don't even call them friends anymore. CIA is crooks in action. Yeah. They're all professional liars. Yeah. I mean, they got to be if they have that job. Yeah. So you have to look at what they're doing. Anyway, they're so concerned they're leaving the country too. Most of them are going to Latin America. Meanwhile, they're closing in every day right now, just closing in to make it so we're going to be set up in these enemy prisoner war camps. I published a book. It's called Chaos in America. In it, I was asked to build an enemy prisoner war camp. I put the contract in this book, so you can read it for yourself. This is in downtown Las Vegas, right on the railroad tracks. It says enemy prisoner war camp. They're all on top. And they're building them all the way across the United States right now. Bush signed an executive order taking the old forts and the army places that we shut down to get those organized to hold the so-called dissidents. Now, what's the definition of a dissident? And the problem is that we're going to enslave ourselves, because most of the people want to keep having food coming in, and you're going to follow the line. You're just walking yourself into your own prison camp. Then we're going to come down to the extermination, just like World War II. Right. Well, Phil and I have lectured together. I know Phil Snyder. He's dead now.
Yeah, I know he's dead. And so what about what he was saying about the number of bases at that time? I think it was 129 bases before he died. Underground had already been built. Is that all for the elite?
Yeah.
Really?
What are they going to do with the rest of the people? They just get rid of them, leave them above ground, and be radiated. Now, my son happens to be a nuclear physicist. Spent the last 3.5 years in a secret city in Russia. They're about 12 years ahead of us. They have 22,000 nuclear warheads. And, of course, we're the target. The Soviets have 3 nuclear submarines on the west coast and 3 on the east coast. They're about 2 football fields in length, 5 stories tall, and they all are nuclear power and aimed at our major cities. West Coast gone. Well, because the plan is the northern hemisphere is where they're going to release the nuclear bombs, and the theory was that the winds from the North Pole that are coming down, because that's increasing drastically, will go to the equator, and there will be very little spillover, because the reverse of the winds because of the southern hemisphere.
Okay.
So therefore, the nuclear radiation here will be a lot more than the southern hemisphere.
And this is a fait accompli, you believe?
Oh, they
Really?
think so. Oh, yeah, they think they've won. That's the reason why they don't bother about me talking about it. They don't care whether you know or not. What are you going to do about it? And you have no idea what China is until you go over there for yourself. With 1,300,000,000. You understand? Almost, well, a little over 4 times our population.
Right.
It's, I spent some time over there and I had some government friends. They think what they're going to do is let the West go have its fight. And then they want to clean up. They say it's been 5,000 years. We want to run the world when they get through. And what they're doing? Acquiring all the assets. They figure that Canada and the United States, the property there will, the food growing areas will be enough to take care of their people. And that's what they're looking at. Why are they? I mean, they bought
So
oil.
the U.S. will become a resource. Yeah.
Whatever's left of it.
Whatever's left of it, yeah. You seem to be in a unique position to be able to put a fair amount of this together, which is quite interesting.
Well, I walked my talk. I played the game.
You played the game. You know one level of it.
And I know. I used to play around with the world leaders, so I know what they're planning on doing.
What change of heart? What happened in you that made you decide to share this information that happens at the inside levels?
Well, it come back to a moral situation that happened to me, I think. When I flew to Aspen. I brought my 2 daughters up there so they could go skiing. And when I was invited to this meeting. When I walked into the room, the world leaders were there. And that's when they asked me to be the finance chairman. As they said, we'd like you to be the finance chairman for the next president of the United States. And the first thing I asked is, why me? And they said, well, we owe you a favor. Remember I told you I volunteered to be president of companies as I went down.
And then you liquidate, yeah.
I didn't charge them anything for it. It was just a game.
I see.
And anyway, that's what they said.
So I thought you'd be good on the team, yeah.
I'd be good. I'd be a team player. I just did it because it was, another one of these things. So next thing I asked them, I said, well, wait a minute. I just started this $100 million project. And they said, don't worry about it. We'll put it on ice. And I said, okay, who with? And I said, well, you can do that. Then I said the next thing was, who is going to be the next president? Now, this is 2 years before he became president.
Right.
They said Jimmy Carter. And I said, Jimmy who? And they said, well, he's the Democratic governor of Georgia. And I said, I've been voting Republican. And Paul Volcker said, son, don't worry about it. We control them both.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I got the next question is, what does a finance chairman do?
Yeah.
I haven't been doing that. I've been playing all this other stuff. They said, will you sit down with Ted? And so I sat over with Ted Kennedy. He's sitting right next to me. And Ted and I are, he's just joking. He says, George, you're going to love this job. You're really good with money. We're going to send you out to all the state Democratic functions to raise money for the National Democratic Party. And he said, you're going to meet some real foxy ladies. And just then, my daughter walked in. Ted looked at her and he says, wow, I want to go to bed with that. I says, no, you don't, Ted. That's my daughter, and she's 14. And his response to me was, I don't care. I was livid. I really didn't know what to do.
So it was that moment
Well,
of
wait a
that
minute.
personal insult.
That was part of it.
Yeah.
I got up and I walked across the room.
Yeah.
I then talked to Pierre Trudeau and his wife, who was the Prime Minister of Canada at that time. And I'm sitting in front of them was a little half cigar box full of white powder. And then I'm looking around the rest of the room. I said, my God, something hit me at that point. If the world leaders have to resort to this, I don't think I want to be part of this thing. I mean, even to the even to the pollution and getting everything else they're talking about, getting rid of all the other people. I mean, I was raised in a packing house and slaughtering animals, and you get to the point where people are just animals at that level. And then I found out a little bit more about the details of the Plan 2000, of the annihilation of the entire planet. I said, I got to stop these people. There's something there. I mean, it's just, they got to be stopped.